Welcome back to the podcast, episode 91, the Creative Process Podcast with myself, Jared Klein. Obviously, we have a guest on, but first, I just want to say thank you for coming out to episode 91. We are 9 away from hitting the century mark. I never thought we would be getting that far, but it's fantastic. We're so close. Anyways, Trevin, thank you for taking the time out of your day and coming on today. I really appreciate that. How have you been? It's been a while since we've talked face to face.
Yeah, I've been good. I mean, the last month has been, I'd probably say even more than that. Since like June, July, it's just been a whirlwind craziness. But, you know, enjoying life right now. Finally got my feet planted, so just enjoying that.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome, man. Well, if you don't mind, introduce yourself to the people that don't know who you are, and then we'll get into what we have slated today.
Yeah, so I'm Trevin Kalick. I am 23. I am currently the social media designer for the Los Angeles Chargers. I just started on Sunday. My first day was the game against the Dolphins, so that was a lot of fun. I'm currently remote, working from home. Plan to move out to LA in October. Just recently left Maryland football. I was their creative content designer, so I was over all graphics, whether socially or recruiting. But yeah, that's kind of me. I've been in this since I was started when I was 18, and now I'm 23, and I'm going to the NFL, which is crazy.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that was awesome to see you announce that, and it's fantastic. It's always nice seeing people that, I mean, you were at Arkansas State, you were at Austin Peay before that. Is that how you say Austin Peay?
Yep, Austin Peay.
Austin Peay before that, and then just kind of moving up, you know, hitting the ladder rungs, and then all of a sudden, you know, it seems like all of a sudden, but now you're with the Chargers, man.
Yeah, it's been crazy. I've said to my family, my friends, and everything about it. Just like, obviously, I started in 2018 when I went to UTC, which is a school, FCS school near where I grew up. Went there for a semester and dropped out because I was not doing well in school at all. I was not a good student. I was a graphic design major, and 3 of the 4 classes I was taking were art classes. And if you take me off a computer, I am the least artistic person you'll ever meet. I cannot paint. I can't draw. So I hated it. I was doing so bad. So I talked to my dad, who's big about going to school. And I was like, look, I think I'm going to take the semester off, and then I'll go to like community college in next fall. Like, I just need to take some time off. And I was lucky enough that whenever I took that time off, I got a remote job with Austin Peay just through people I knew. And I kind of used that to show my dad, like, hey, I can do this without a degree. I can kind of, use my talent that I have at the time to get jobs. And it just kind of snowballed to this. And all of a sudden now I'm about to move out to LA. So it's definitely it feels like it's been all of a sudden, like you said, I mean, it does not feel like it's been 5 years now, but it's been a long process.
Right. Yeah. Everything moves faster when it's going in the direction you want it to go. Right.
Yep.
What's the saying? Time moves faster when you're having fun, or something like that.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. By the way, another fantastic story to have on the podcast. Someone who, did you get a college degree? Did you not go to college at all?
No degree.
Fantastic. So that check another one off the list. That's another person we have had on the podcast with no college degree, and that's proven that you don't need a college degree. That's fantastic. Kudos to you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Definitely. I mean, I think eventually I'll go back and get something just to like fall back on it. Like, just have like a business degree or something like that. But right now, I mean, yeah, like you said, in this industry, it's so, it's creative. Like, I think going and getting a degree, if you want to, is great. That you're definitely going to learn things that help. But at the end of the day, it's all about your creative mind and what you can come up with, and that you don't necessarily need a degree for that. So it was definitely something that I had to come to terms with. I questioned it a lot throughout my time, but it definitely worked out for the better.
Hell yeah, that's awesome, man. That really is. That's super fantastic. Did you have aspirations of moving to a big city, or you just kind of wherever the job takes me, I'll go?
Kind of a little bit of both. It's funny, when I was growing up, so I grew up in a really small town in Georgia. It's called Ringgold, Georgia. Only the people that know me, that listen to this, will know what that is, because it's literally just a very small town. So growing up in that small town, I was definitely that kid that was like, I want to get out. I do not want to stay here. I know too many people that have lived here for their whole lives. Like, I don't want to be that person. And so whenever I was in high school, my original plan was sports journalism. I fell in love with sports when I was young. My dad, just watching sports with him, I fell in love with it. So I was like, I'm going to be a sports journalist. I'm going to work for ESPN. I'm going to move to like, Connecticut. I'm going to go work for ESPN. And then in high school, I was kind of put into a graphic design class that I didn't even sign up for. I just kind of got thrown into it. And I remember when I first got, I was like, I'm going to hate this class. I'm not artistic. I don't like art. I don't want to do this. And I just kind of fell in love with it. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And it just kind of became a hobby. I used it because I love sports. So I made like Patriots edits and Florida Gator edits and stuff like that. Legally downloaded Photoshop on my computer that summer after I got out of school.
Crack Photoshop.
Oh yeah, everyone has that story. And so I kind of fell in love with design, and I always wanted to get out of my small town. And whenever I was in high school, I remember being like, I'm going to go to Arizona State. And my mom was always just like, no, I don't want you to go that far. But I'm like, they have a good journalism school, whatever. But I was really excited. I was like, I wanted to get as far away from Georgia as I possibly could. So whenever the opportunity to move out to Arkansas came up, I kind of jumped on it. It was my first time getting away from home. And obviously that took me to Maryland, and now getting to go to LA. It's definitely going to be a big adjustment. I mean, I think it's nice. I'm very glad I moved to Maryland before, because where at like College Park is 30 minutes from DC, 45 from Baltimore. So like you're close enough to the big cities that you get the interactions with it, but you don't actually live in it. So it kind of gave me the idea of what it's like to be around big cities. And so now moving to an actual like huge city like Los Angeles will definitely be an adjustment period, but I'm very excited to get to experience it. And I definitely want to be there for a while. So I'm definitely excited.
Hell yeah. That's fantastic. What has been in your first couple days, what's been your favorite thing you've done so far? I saw you posted one graphic, right? Or quote retweeted the graphic that you made?
One I made is only one's been posted so far. The Keenan Allen had 800 career catches. I had a win poster or win graphic ready to go for the game. Sadly, we couldn't pull it out. That wasn't great. Everyone knows that feeling of you're so ready for this to go out, and then they lose. You're just like, okay. But yeah, I mean, it's only been a couple days. So like, I'm proud of the graphic. I think we have one coming out tomorrow, kind of highlighting, or I guess whenever you're coming out on Wednesday, highlighting our rushing attack that we had in the game. And so I'm really proud of how that one turned out. So I'm excited for that to get posted, and then just excited, just like the photos that I've seen on their photo shelter from the photographers are just incredible. Everything. So I'm so excited to be able to work with, I love Maryland, and the team that I worked with there was amazing. And I worked so well with them, but to be able to get up to like the big times of the NFL, like all these people were just so talented, and there's so many of them. I think that's the biggest thing is like, I've worked with a lot of talented people, but there's just so many of them. You have so many resources now that I'm just so excited to get to utilize that and just be a part of it, really.
Hell yeah. That's awesome, man. That is so awesome. So getting into your stuff that you did, I guess now in your college days, with Maryland and Arkansas State, I saw on your portfolio something that I wanted to touch on. I have it slated on our notes as designing social and marketing campaigns. Within collegiate athletics, I think like a lot of people that are around collegiate athletics or even know of collegiate athletics, there's National Signing Days, and there's, other things like other promotional stuff that goes on within that to help promote teams, to help promote players within those teams and stuff like that. But in your case, the signing days, going into, maybe you can think back, I guess the Maryland one is probably the most recent, but when you were concepting for that stuff and having conversations about that stuff, I mean, obviously you want to showcase the players, but what was kind of going into that whole process, if you don't mind?
Yeah, no, I mean, I love talking about it. I think those are two of my most like things I'm most proud of. I definitely love talking about them because it's a lot of work that goes into stuff like that. Like people don't really think about it because it just all comes out in one day and they're just like, oh yeah, that's very cool. Like whatever. But, yeah, it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of moving parts. Maryland's was a lot easier. Like I said, I had such a great team around me. I was the only designer, but like we had video people that helped out. Official visits were very easy. I mean, I don't want to say easy, but we're a lot more streamlined because the recruiting staff did such a great job. And like we had it all planned out and everything. So it made it a lot simpler. At Maryland, we had OVs in like official visits in June. for a couple weeks, and then we would have a few more in December, and then we'd obviously have early signing day. And so that made it a lot easier to kind of plan out. Like I already had a chunk of the players that we were going to do from June, and then we had a couple more come in December.
Mm-hmm.
But with Arkansas State, that one really stands out to me because it was like you said, like Maryland is so recent, but like I don't know if I'll ever forget the experience of doing National Signing Day at Arkansas State, which the people I worked with there, like I was the only designer, and then we had a student that was our video guy, and we were the only two creatives. Like my direct boss was our director of scouting, so like while he was focusing on scouting, he would also help out with creative every now and then, just kind of give us ideas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the one that brought me to Arkansas State from Austin Peay. So he like Grubbs is like one of my best friends. He's great, did a lot for me. But going into that, like we had brainstorming sessions of what we wanted to do. But I'm not sure if this is for every group of five, but from when I was at Arkansas State, we didn't have official visits in June. Like we had unofficial visits during like camps and stuff, but we didn't have like official visits.
Mm-hmm.
Every single official visit we had was in December after the season. So we had 2 weekends of official visits, and then right after those 2 weekends we had early signing day. So we had about, I want to say 25 to 28 kids on campus in those 2 weekends. We probably signed 22 to 23 of them, and I had to turn them all over in 2 weeks. Like right on that, when they would leave, we would do the photo shoots on Saturday. When they would leave on Sunday, I would make stuff for them like to send out for when they leave. And then Monday through Thursday, I was making prepping the graphics. And then on Friday, the next batch would come in. So it was just a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of like, it was very crazy. But the idea that we came up with, what we did, it was like for people who haven't seen it, we kind of did like this stop motion idea of, I had my camera and we just took a bunch of photos and I just rapid shoot them, and it switched from them being in regular clothes into the jersey, and then it came up with their name and stuff like that. And it took a lot of time of making that stop motion everything, and it was very tedious, but I am still very proud of them to this day. Like there's definitely things I would have done differently now that I've learned more, but looking back, like I remember just being so stressed out that day, and people are coming to me like, "Hey, Trevin, like these are incredible. Like you did a really good job." And so that's always nice whenever you have people like tell you like, "Hey, man, like these are like standing out. Like people are noticing these." So that was just a crazy time trying to get those turned over. And like I think anyone that's worked in college athletics has a story like that, where they have this crazy turnaround time to get a project done. So that was a nice thing whenever I got to Maryland. I got there and they didn't really have so from my knowledge, I was the first dedicated designer for Maryland football. They always used either freelancers or like their athletic designer in the past. So when I got there, they didn't really have like a recruiting campaign to speak, like a hashtag, because they just didn't have a designer for it. So there's like, whatever, we'll just do what we can. So when I came in, I noticed that we had this throne in the room, and I was like, oh, this is a really cool thing that not a lot of people have. I was like, we should capitalize on this. We should do something like this. So I remember going to my boss at the time, our creative director, and be like, hey, what do you think of Own the Throne? Like the 2 can be the R, the 3 can be the E, the best thing of you putting the numbers in the hashtag and everything. I was like, I think it'd be really cool. It's unique to us. I know it doesn't really have much Maryland branding, but like it's very, and he's like, oh yeah, I love it. Like, let's roll with it. So he just kind of let me do my thing and figure it out. And throughout the year, we decided on a graffiti theme because we wanted to show like the grittiness, and graffiti is a very big thing in the DC area. So just kind of working that brand throughout the whole season, and then seeing it come together with that national. I think that's the best thing about signing day. No matter what, is you build this brand from February until December and the next February, and you finally get to see it like come to fruition and sign those players and see them get announced, and everybody kind of be like, oh, like get so happy that they're signing and everything. So it's just a really cool experience to get to go through that, and it's a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it in the end.
Yeah, I was gonna say it probably is a lot of hours, but yeah, seeing it when it's all posted and all finished, and the interaction it gets, and the excitement it garners and everything is probably well worth it.
Yeah, 100%.
What were the conversations going into that when it came to your audience and your fan base? What was that all about? Like talking about keeping them engaged and making sure like they still recognize the brand and stuff like that. And
So I think a big part of that is, utilizing some recruiting pieces throughout the year on your main accounts. Because normally most of the recruiting stuff's going out to just the recruits and it's getting retweeted and stuff, but it's not really like on your main page.
mm-hmm.
So you kind of utilize that indirectly every now and then to kind of tie it together so that when it comes up, it doesn't look like this random, like, oh wow, like this looks nothing like what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something. But I feel like in my mind, when it comes to signing day, like your audience is very important. But at the end of the day, it's about the kids. Like it's about the people that you're signing. It's more about, those 17, 18-year-olds that are about to join the program and are, hopefully are going to lead that program into the next level because that's what you want to do with every recruiting class.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of going into that, like, yes, you want to keep your audience and everything, but you kind of go in knowing like no matter what happens, they're going to interact with it. They're going to be happy we're signing someone. Obviously, that could change if all of a sudden you have a really bad recruiting class and people are mad. But as long as your recruiting staff's doing its job and we're getting good people, they're going to interact with it because they're just happy that we're signing a good class.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like when it comes to signing day and recruiting and stuff like that, the focus really is just on those kids, like knowing, like making sure they're highlighted, they're getting their spotlight, and they're getting their recognition for all the hard work they put in through those 18 years of their life to get this opportunity to play for a school like Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, when it comes to like the recruiting stuff, did Maryland do college programs? Do they have a separate stuff, like separate account that they post dedicated to recruiting, or does it mainly just go to the players, just to showcase the players?
It depends on the school. Some will have a separate recruiting account. Some will use it to like they'll have a thing called Whistle that sends out graphics to kids like through DMs and stuff, and they'll use that account to make it a little bit easier, just a central account.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll also use that to post different things. I don't believe we actually had one at Maryland that like we actively used a lot to like post things. For the most part, it was sending it to the kids. They would post it, and then like our recruiting staff, our main page would retweet it every now and then. Loxley would retweet it, our head coach. So you kind of just rely on those kids to put it out because
Mm-hmm.
they're going to get you a whole new, and like it's really for them. Like that's kind of that's kind of the nice thing about recruiting is like when you're on, you want to have this a brand on your main accounts. Like you want to make sure everything is very like not uniform, but very like just fits the brand that you've created.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to recruiting, and I've told this to my students that I was like, I'm going to give you a lot of recruiting projects because this is stuff that you can have fun with. Like you can do the cool stuff that you don't really get to do all the time when it comes to like a social brand. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would kind of handle the social aspect more because I like had a very specific idea of the brand that I wanted, and I knew they would do a great job with it. But I'm very anal when it comes to stuff like that. So I want it to be a very specific way. So
you had your baby.
Exactly. And so I was just like, and honestly, I was like telling them like the best thing you can do is learn to be creative. So here's this recruiting thing. Have fun, do what you want, enjoy it, and like enjoy it while you can. Because once you get a job like where I'm at, you do have to start worrying about that branding, the guidelines, and all that stuff, and not being able to do certain things. So like I think that's the kind of fun part about recruiting is you can kind of just throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Make this crazy graphic and send it out, and you have those moments like Ole Miss or Auburn making the thing about Buc-ee's, and then all of a sudden it goes crazy because one kid posted and somebody sees it, and it kind of just snowballs from there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something like it was fit to their brand, but it was also very different, and you wouldn't see that come out. Like they wouldn't post on their main account because that's not a main account post. It's recruiting. You kind of do what you want. So I think that's definitely the fun part of it is that you don't really have to stick to this like strict brand. Like you obviously want to have a cohesiveness, but you can kind of do some fun things along the way that is a little bit different because it's meant specifically for those kids.
How much focus, like how do I word this? Obviously, like recruiting is very important for collegiate programs, right? How much focus for you guys? Like, what was your percentage of work when it came to recruiting?
Man,
Like, was it like like preparing for in season and recruiting like 50-50 split, or was it just like overload almost, you know?
I would definitely say there's more of an emphasis on recruiting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like to like there's definitely a lot of social stuff that you do, but you know, just by quantity wise, because like it's so hard to like think, and I've always had trouble like thinking of it this way, because like when you make a good luck graphic, you think of it as just like, I made one graphic, but you have to data set it and it's sent out to 300 kids. So really you're making, even though it's the same graphic and it's just changing the name, that's 300 graphics that you're sitting there waiting for your computer to process and go through and get done, and you can't touch it until it gets done. And so that takes time out of your day to do other things. So, and I think that's something that, and like I said, I struggle thinking of that, because like I'll have people come up to me, like whenever I was at Maryland, they'd be like, how many graphics have you done this month? And like my initial thought was like, I don't know, maybe like 1 a day, 2 a day, something like that, whatever. But then I'm like, no. And then in my head, I'm just like, no, I made this good luck graphic that went out, this personalized graphic that went out. So like it really adds up to how many graphics you really made, even though it's the same one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that people need to kind of like, I wouldn't say creatives need to realize that. I think a lot of creatives know that it's a lot of work. It's more so the people outside of creative that think it's just one click of a button and you can change the name and it's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, like this takes a lot of time. Like this is, and it's not just coming up. It's not just like we can come up with the idea on the spot. Like we need time to sit and ideate. And I think that's something that can struggle when it comes to recruiting, because it's such a fast paced environment of what we need to get something out now. We need to put something out this or whatever. And communication can kind of get thrown behind when it comes to stuff like that. So you get a text on a Thursday night that's like, hey, we need a good luck graphic to send out.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, okay, well, let me try to come up with an idea. And then it's kind of, you get rushed and you don't make your best work. And
Mm-hmm.
so I feel like there's definitely a conversation to be had about that, of figuring out the best way to communicate and figure out the best workflow for everyone when it comes to stuff like that, because it can, if you let it can become very overwhelming when it comes to recruiting, because it's just so fast paced.
Mm-hmm. I bet it just has the potential just to pile up and pile up and pile up. And
yes, yeah, I've definitely been there. Of my ADHD brain will be like, I'll get to that in a second, and then all of a sudden it's Thursday and I need to make 4 graphics. I'm like, okay, let me sit down and put in my headphones and lock in so I can get this stuff done. So I put it off for 3 days.
Right. I think we've all been there though.
Oh yeah.
We put something on the weekly to-do list on Monday. We don't touch it till Friday,
Yep, 100%. Oh yeah, everyone's done it.
Oh my goodness. So quickly, since something popped into my head about like, potential projects and stuff that I'm currently doing and stuff that I'm excited for, but since you got your new job, what are you excited to do for the Chargers? Obviously, like it's the NFL, so like there's just a lot of stuff going on, and there's so much things that teams put out, and there's so much that you guys are tasked with. But what's like on like your first thing that you're like, I can't wait to do this?
Honestly, just like building the brand. Like I think, and it's kind of tough because I think it was something that caused me some anxiety coming into this. Of my first day was the first game. Like, normally you come up, like for Maryland, I came up with our brand, or like kind of started the groundwork for our brand back in, July. Mm-hmm. And then a little bit into August. And then like halfway through August, I had it set and I knew what I was going to do 2 weeks before the season started. So normally you go in and you make this brand beforehand so that when you get into the season, you're not kind of hitting the ground running. You're not so like scatterbrained. You kind of know what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. So joining a team this, this late into the process and trying to figure it out, like I'm almost trying to just keep my head above water right now. And like they've been super understanding about that. Like they even said it in my interview process of like, hey, we don't expect you to come in and be don't feel like you need to be a hero. Don't feel like you need to do 1,000 things. Don't feel like you need to completely revamp everything and just be drowning. Like you're going to, like, we understand that you're coming in at a pretty rough time. Like it's going to be a process. Like you're going to figure it out. Like we're here to support you, whatever you need. Mm-hmm. So like, that's been really great of just, so it's kind of, haven't really thought about like what I'm really wanting to do, especially because I think I'm just glad to be a part of it, glad to be in the NFL. Like I still have that kind of like the what's it called? Like whenever you're in an early relationship, the
honeymoon stage.
Honeymoon, yes, exactly. The honeymoon stage. Where I'm like, man, I'm in the NFL. This is so cool. Like,
right.
I see a graphic I post. I'm like, oh my god, the Chargers posted a graphic I made. I'm like, wait, I work, it's like that kind of feeling of it hasn't really set in yet. So I'm honestly just excited to see what I can do and throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks and figure it out on the fly and just build a brand that I'm proud of. And obviously that's going to take some time and probably will be more so next year, but I know I'm willing to put that time in. I think saying this, I may have some people kind of look at me weird, but I think this is the first time I've taken a job ever where I've been like, I want to stay here for a while. Like when I went to Arkansas State, as much as I love the people there, I was like, after a year, I'll see what happens. I originally wanted to stay there for a year or two, but the money was just not right. So I ended up going to Maryland. And then when I came to Maryland, I was definitely in the mindset of get through the season, see what's out there. If nothing comes up, cool. I enjoy the job I'm at, but definitely want to keep looking. I think coming here, I'm like, I can't wait to see what I can do in 3-4 years. Like I want to be here for a while. The support system, the people that I've already interacted with just already and that I've met and everything have just been really awesome. So I'm just excited to get to know them more, get to know everybody that I work with and figure it out and just kind of grow as much as I can.
Well, hell yeah, man. That is exciting.
Yep.
I'm just super proud to see that like you got that job and it was awesome to see online and I was super excited when that happened. I don't know, just excitement and I was like, that's fucking cool. That's fucking sweet.
It's so crazy because like I feel like when you work in sports, because obviously if you work in sports, you grew up watching sports. You don't like I mean I'm sure there are some people that kind of got into it without watching sports growing up, but from like I mean I watched the Patriots in Florida and everything with my dad so much that I just fell in love with sports. But as you work in it, you kind of lose that like the pageantry around it, or like that's not what I'm really looking for, but you kind of lose that like nostalgia for it because it's a job at the end of the day. Even though you are working in like a really cool industry, it is a job. So you kind of lose that like coolness of it sometimes. Like you don't really realize until you like talk to someone that's not in sports and they're like, dude, what you like when I went back home for New Year's, I was talking to one of my buddies and I hadn't seen him in a while, like just from a guy that I went to high school with. And he's like, oh, what are you up to right now? I was like, oh, I'm living in Maryland. He's like, oh, like, what are you doing there? I was like, oh, I work for Maryland's football team making their graphics. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah. He's like, dude, that's so cool. Like, that's crazy. Like, I can't, and I'm like, in my head, I remember being like, oh yeah, that's not a normal job people have. Like you kind of just forget. So I think whenever I got this job, it kind of brought that like magicness back or the magic back to it of like, oh wow, this is the NFL. Like I remember earlier this year thinking to myself like, okay, I want to lay out my plan for the next couple of years. Be at Maryland for this season, maybe look for a different job after the season. And then in like 3 to 5, maybe go to another college, move around, see the country, all that. And then maybe in like 3 to 5 years, I'll go to some pro league. I'll go to the NFL, NBA, MLB, whatever. So I was like 3 to 5 years, I'll be good. And all of a sudden now I'm in it at 20, in September of the same year. So it's just been a crazy, just like whirlwind. And like I said, this process started I had my first interview with the Chargers in July while I was at the beach with my family. I just had like an initial interview with them. And then I, went through their long process and obviously getting it. And it's been so crazy. And I've had so many people reach out to me and just say how proud they are of me. And like, it is a very cool thing you kind of have to remind yourself not to get too big headed about it because it can,
but it's fucking sweet, man.
It is. It's really I have to find a good balance. Like I catch myself a lot of being like, I've had some moments, and especially coming from a small town, I'll have that moment of like, man, I can't wait to go back to my my high school reunion and be like, yeah, I work in the NFL. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? No, like, yes, you're doing great things, but just keep working. Like, don't worry about other people. Just, figure yourself out and you're going to do great things. So it's definitely been a crazy couple weeks, and I'm just glad to be doing it. I still can't believe it happened.
For sure. Yeah, that's crazy. One thing I want to get your opinion on, you mentioned it a little bit about like your tenure at at Arkansas State and at Maryland. You know, it was like a year, and then you're like, hey, you know, I'm going to kind of explore a little bit. I feel like that's pretty common within the sports industry, especially for designers. I don't know for like other creatives or
it's
other positions.
In sports in general. I mean, coaches move around all the time, recruiting. It's the industry. Well, I'll say college sports for sure. People move around a lot.
So yeah, I guess like comparing that to other industries, at least based off of, you know, my base knowledge about other industries, you know, that's not super common among other industries, you know.
Yeah.
If you like work in like finance or work in shit, I don't know what else. What else?
100%. Yeah. You go one place, you live there for a while, you buy a house, and you work till you retire, and then that's it. You know, like kind of just for sure.
Yeah, like that was so otherworldly. Well, like the whole concept of that was like otherworldly to me when I first like started working within the industry. It's like I'm seeing some of my friends, you know, go from job to job to job, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, is that a bad thing? But no, they're going up, you know, like it's like their prestige or caliber of job is rising. And I was like, wait, like I think I found the only profession, well, maybe not the only profession, but a creative profession where your work and your knowledge is not completely, but probably 95% based off of the physical pieces that you produce, and your work ethic and your skill set is easily seen rather than having to be, you know, interviewed 5 times and talk to 7 references and stuff like that, you know?
Yep.
We're in such a unique industry, you know, not only the sports industry, but the creative industry, where the stuff that we produce is a direct correlation to our skill set, and, you know, to where, you know, some things can get inflated and other things, you know, sometimes you're just dependent on references and stuff like that, but to where like for your example, like most people look for, you know, school, and that's like their limit of dedication. And, you know, if you have that 4-year degree, but in your case, you produced good work, and, you know, you got your current success because of that, you know. It's just a crazy thing to me. It was so otherworldly.
It's funny you say that, because like you try to explain to people that aren't in the industry, and they, you know, like I'm sure, like I've whenever I was gonna leave Arkansas State for Maryland, like my dad totally understood, but he definitely has, like, he's kind of made comments of like, man, like you have moved a lot in the last few years, and but like it's just one of those. It's the industry, like you said. I think there's 2 parts to it. I think one, it's just part of it. I mean, you have, like I said, in college sports, I mean, you have the transfer portal now, so players are moving a lot. You have coaches, assistant coaches that are getting jobs. So I mean, when I was at Maryland and Arkansas State, we lost probably 2 or 3 or 4 assistant coaches in the off season. So we had to replace it. So like, I mean, it's just the standard in college sports, if you kind of move around a lot, because it's my outlook on it is it's the easiest way to get a raise. It can be very hard in our industry, because especially as a creative, a lot of places don't necessarily value the creative as much as they should, in my opinion. And so when it comes to budgeting, they don't really think of creatives when it comes. They think, how can we, you know, renovate this? How can we get this coach? How can we give this coach a raise? How can we do this, but they don't really think about the creatives. So when you know, are at a place and all of a sudden you have an interview with another school that's going to offer you 80,000 and you're making 60, you kind of have to just be like, you know what, I'm going to go take that 80K, because that's the best way I'm going to make some money right now. And I think that's one part of it. I think another part of it, especially in the creative industry, and like you said, it's the creative sports industries, it's such a, I feel like, since it's such a niche thing, and it's a very new thing, because if you go back 10 years in college sports, and just in sports in general, they didn't really have, you know, a dedicated creative department. They had probably like one designer that made some posters for games, and you had one video person that would make like the stuff for the video board. That's really it. So it's such a new thing in the world, in the industry, that you have a lot of young people in the industry. Like myself, I'm 23. I started this when I was 18. when you're that young, you kind of you just don't care. You're just like, yeah, like I feel like a lot of people get into their careers when they're 25, 26. They have a little bit more life in them. They understand a little bit more. So there's like, they get to a place and they have that idea of, I'm going to stay here because I want to be loyal. I want to whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're 19 years old, and I would say in my case, when I was 21 and I was making about 30K at Arkansas State, and all of a sudden Maryland, I go through the process of Maryland. They're like, hey, we'll give you 60. I'm 21. I'm like, I'm
Taking
doubling
that
my
shit.
I'm going. I'm sorry, but I gotta go. So when you have that young, the industry just in general is so young. Like, I mean, you definitely have the people that are a little bit older, but like
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, I'd say the average age is probably 25, 26, if I had to guess. And you just have so many people that are willing to kind of do whatever it takes to get into it, which can be a detriment at times. But because of that, you have that mindset of, I'm young. Like, especially me, like I had the mindset of, I'm young. I want to experience more. I don't want to be like, as much as I really loved Maryland and I loved working with everybody I worked for, I was like, I don't want to be here until I'm 30. Like, I don't want to be here for 8 years. I don't want to be, tied down in one place. Like, I have so much life to live. I want to go out and experience different things. Like, I want to move to different places and see different people and meet different people and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So I think that's another part of it, is just like, when you get into an industry so young, and like I've had this thought too of, I got into it when I was 18. When I'm 30, which 30 is very young in the grand scheme of everything, I'll have already been in this job for 12 years. Most people, when they're at a job for 12 years, they're in their mid 30s, early 40s, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they're kind of, they're steady. So it has its pros and cons of getting into an industry so young. But yeah, like you said, it's just such a different vibe. It's not like any other job. And I think that's something that kind of is very great about it. It's very cool. It's very different. But at the same time, it can be hard, because when you go and you hang out with your friends and they're not in the industry, they're like, yeah, man, like my boss was doing blah, blah, blah. And you try to explain, and like people can empathize with them, but you try to explain
Mm-hmm.
yours and they're like, what are you talking about? You're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so this is, and you have to just go in such depth and you have to explain every in and out of it, because they just don't understand it, because it's
Mm-hmm.
so out there. It's so different.
Right.
So it's just a very interesting industry. Like, I know I just went on like a very large tangent, but like there's just a lot of stuff that goes into it. It's very crazy.
No, I respect that. I respect that point of view about it. And like, I think I agree with like, well, not agree. Well, in a sense agree, but that's not the right word. The aspect that you put, or that you said about, like how sports design, the industry is like very young. 10
Yeah.
years ago, it wasn't really, much of the industry that we see now and the importance of it now. I think there's turnover and positions available because teams are putting measures to put more emphasis on the progression and the
Yes.
improvement of the creative side at this current time.
Yeah.
I do think that the industry is going to plateau. I do think it is, because I mean, with that, like 10 years back, like there was, I can only, like, how much more, social coverage, other than posting a shit ton more, can we do,
Yeah.
on platforms that we have now,
I think that's definitely something that I've had the thought of as well, that I try not to think about too much, because it kind of can be a little scary. Because I mean, you look at where Twitter, X, whatever it's called, is
Mhm.
at right now. Like, it's not doing great. Everyone in the industry right now is like kind of trying to figure out what they're like, how to navigate it. And with the plans that Elon possibly has, it's not looking like it's going to be the same app that it was.
Mhm.
And so it's just like, what is that going to look like? And so you do have that thought of, in 7, 8, 10 years from now, are we even going to have, because, we barely had Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram 10 years ago. What are we going to have in another 10 years? Are we even going to have social media? What is it going to look like? What is our jobs? Because it could, like you said, it could plateau, but it also could just fall off a cliff if all of a sudden we're not needed. We don't, whatever. So it's definitely something, like, I feel like that's something that we need to, as a community, need to figure out and come together and realize, like, hey, we need to have each other's backs. We need to be a collective of people making sure that, one, we're getting treated fairly, because there's a lot of conversation to be had about the working hours and everything. But also just making sure that we're safe if it ever comes to that, because yeah, we are in a very different industry, but we're in a very volatile industry that stuff changes a lot. Different things happen. I think, and like you said, I do think it'll be more of a plateau. I think you're going to see, I think in the next coming years, as designers get more and more, get older and more mature, you're going to see more people kind of settle down and not move around as much as we see now. And so you'll have people staying at places for a much longer time. And with that, you're not going to, because I think that's a big thing in college athletics right now, is people are moving around so much because either, one, working conditions, or just to get a better job, that you have jobs opening up all the time. There's always something opening up because somebody left somewhere, somebody doesn't want to work, whatever. But eventually I think you're going to finally have people just be like, okay, we're good. We're going to settle down. We're all going to kind of stay, and you'll have the odd jobs pop up here and there. But for the most part, it's going to, like you said, I think I definitely see like a plateau of just people, but more so of like okay, everyone's going to kind of figure out where they want to be, and we're good. And then once that happens, it is kind of that, I wonder what it looks like for the next generation of creatives that come after us. Because you're 26, 27,
25.
Okay, sorry, that was not me.
You were close.
I get, people think I'm older all the time, so
you look older. I'll throw it right back at you.
But like, when we were growing up and when we were starting in the industry, when you started creating when you were 15, 16, I was 15 whenever I started.
Yeah, I was 13.
I had you really only had Tyson Beck, and that's it. I mean,
right.
You really didn't have
going way back.
The amount of resources that these 15, 16-year-olds now have that we didn't at the time is crazy. And so you look at it of like, one, they may come steal our jobs here soon because there's they're so advanced because they get all the resources. I remember watching YouTube videos, and like, I still have graphics up on that are just so bad that I learned through YouTube that are like, but now if you look on YouTube, you have stuff that I'm making now at 23 that these 16-year-olds are getting to see, and they're figuring it out. Like, it's just a very crazy how different it can be as you get older. And like, when it comes to creative field, there's different techniques that people learn at a much younger age than we did. So you have that moment of like, man, these kids, like I'll see some people get reposted on like Juke or something like that, or whatever, Trenches, the different Skull Spark stuff like that. And they're like, oh, this 17-year-old made it. I'm like, this kid's 17? Like, this is ridiculous. That's not fair. Like, he's crazy. So it's just one of those things, like, the industry is just so wild. So I am interested to see what it looks like in the next 5-6 years, but it's definitely at its peak, right? Like, it's getting to its peak. Like, so many people are seeing it. It's now like, you wouldn't even have thought of it as a job back then, but now people see it all the time. Like, oh, I want to go do that. So it's just interesting to see what's going to happen in those 5-6 years with so much it's getting almost oversaturated to a point of like, what's going to happen? Like, how are you going to fix it? How are you going to figure it out? So I'm very interested to see what happens.
For sure. So you mentioned within our conversation a little bit back, you mentioned about, work hours and, that whole aspect of respect and being creatives being, I guess I'll say respected, more than what they are now. So to hit more on those work hours things, you had us add something to the list of what we're going to talk about today, and that was mental health. I think that's a great thing to kind of touch on, especially I think at least it gets talked about more within the collegiate space. It does. It gets talked about a lot more within the collegiate space. You painted the picture, right? You were the only designer. Maybe there was another creative. Like when you were at Arkansas State, you were the only designer and you had a student working video. You guys are doing everything. That piles up and everything on that just, you get behind and then you get even more behind and then everything else just piles up and then you got more pressure and all of that, how that kind of goes. in your experience, obviously I don't want to have you, get into a moment where
Ask me anything. I am an open book on this stuff. Ask me anything.
In your experience, kind of managing that whole thing,
Yeah.
I feel like if you are a designer listening to this, and I can relate to this whole thing too. And obviously you wanted to bring it up. I'll have you tell your story here in a second. But like, if you're a designer in the industry, I feel like you've experienced this a little bit. I feel like everyone experienced this a little bit. It's just an aspect of, I think it's just an aspect of our careers that we think, like, people still think that we can shell these things out like it's clockwork,
Yes.
But there's a lot more that goes into it, and I think it's that bridge of understanding that's getting closer. The bridge is getting a lot shorter, but getting there, I think there's still a long way to go, and the understanding of
100%
creative process, no pun intended, the understanding of that has to, that bridge has to close a little bit more.
Yes.
But yes, anyways, how did you manage that whole thing? Obviously we all go through our dark days and get into moments where we get in a rut, but how did you manage that? How did you think about those type of things?
So something I learned pretty early on. So I would say, like, I started my career, like I said, at UTC 2018. I was 18 years old. I was a freshman in college.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't doing too much. But then I immediately went into working remotely for Austin Peay. So like, I kind of made my own hours, like worked from home, literally just laid in bed all day and worked on my computer. So I never really had that, I've never worked like in any other job outside of this. Like, I've only worked in creatives. Like, I've never worked a retail job, anything like that. So whenever I moved to Arkansas and worked in an office for the very first time, I didn't really know the office, etiquette, like what went into it, when people get in, when people leave, like what you do, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of I had to learn on the fly. And I remember whenever I got there, I would be in at the 7:30 staff meetings at Arkansas State. So I'd have to get to work super early. But I would always, no matter what, I would be out the door at 5 o'clock. The minute my computer said 5 o'clock, I packed up my stuff and I walked out. And that's not a very common thing in sports. You have coaches that are working 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. They go home, they sleep, they come back to work, and they do it again. Mm-hmm. But for me, I was a 20-year-old kid, and it almost benefited me that I didn't have that, I don't want to say didn't have the drive, but I didn't have that need to be in the office 24/7. Mm-hmm. So I would just walk out at 5. And I remember one day Grubbs, my boss, made just a joke, because we would always kind of haze each other. He made a joke oh, a real 9 to 5 guy, getting out here at 5 o'clock. I'm like, dude, I can do my work from home. If you need something, text me and I'll get it done. There's no reason for me to be sitting in this office and just chilling, whatever. I'd rather be at home, eating some food, watching a movie. And if you need something, I'll work on it at home. So I feel like that's something that creatives need to understand a little bit more, or I hope they take from this, is know your worth and set boundaries. Set your boundaries early. Do not, because I feel like a lot of people fall into the trap of, when they get a new job or they start somewhere new, they want to look like the overachiever. They want to look like that person that's willing to, take the next step, which is great. That's fine. That's awesome. That's a great mindset to have. But set boundaries early. Make sure that when you get to that, when you get in and you get in at 9 o'clock and if you want to get home by 5:30, when it hits 5, you say, hey, you know what? I'm going to head out. If you need anything, give me a text. I'll work on it at home, but I'm going to go home. I need to distress. I need to do whatever. I think that's something that I was naive enough to learn that. And it's almost like I learned it without meaning to learn it. I just kind of did it. I was just it's 5 o'clock. Okay, I'll head out. And it just became a thing. And I'm why would I stay in the office until 8 o'clock if I can be at home on my couch? And if they need something, I can make it super fast. I can just get on my computer. So I think that's something that people just really just set your boundaries, know your worth. And that helps so much of being able to say okay, I'm gonna it's 4:30, it's 5 o'clock, whatever. I'm going to head home. Mm-hmm. I know if they need it, I can work on it at home, mm-hmm. but plan on when you get home, because I'm working remotely right now. I think this is the first time I've ever this is the first time I've worked at home in a long time. Like normally when I would get home from Maryland, the last thing I want to do is touch my computer. Like every now and then, if they really need something, I'll work on it. But I'll leave the office at 6 o'clock, and I'm like, if you need something, I'll get it done in the morning. Like unless it is a very pressing thing, I promise you can wait until the morning. Like you don't need to be sending out a graphic at 10 o'clock at night to some recruit. Like you can wait until it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I promise. So I think it's that kind of thing of, again, like the way I said, it's a little more combative than you want to be, but you want to say that in a very respectful way. And like you said, you want to bridge that gap of, yes, the standard or the idea in sports is you have to work these crazy hours, but you really don't, especially in our industry. Like we work in a computer centric industry. Those computers can come home with you. Like, and it definitely sucks to work from home a lot. And like, you want to make sure that it's not like it's not all the time, but like you do have that option. So don't feel bad if you're leaving. Cause I know there's a lot of people out there that, like, you walk out the door at 5 o'clock and you see other people in the office still there. You feel bad. You're like, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should burn them in. It's like, no, man, just figure yourself out. I promise you, like, they'll make it work. So I think that's a big thing when it comes to hours of, like, obviously can be very privileged. Like, you do have some places where if you try to leave early, some, like, the head coach or the DFO may kind of call you out and make you feel bad about it. And if that's happening, get out. That's all I can say is run for the hills, because that is not a place you want to be. When I was at Arkansas State, and I love Butch Jones, the head coach at Arkansas State. He gave me my first big opportunity. He's a big reason why I'm here. And he was a very big stickler on, people staying late, but he understood I could do my job from home. So he never felt like he needed to get on to me for leaving. He knew that he knew I did my job well. He knew I got my stuff done. So if you have a person in your office that's giving you hell for leaving, or is reporting you, or whatever's going on, or making you feel like you need to stay late, either don't listen to them or get out and find a better situation. Because like we said, there's so many out there right now. You don't need to feel like, if they're making you feel like you need to be this rock star that has to be there 24/7, it's just not worth your mental health. It's not worth it at all. Like, you're going to get a year in and realize that you're just so unhappy, and it's not going to be worth it. So I think that's my biggest thing when it comes to working those hours. It's just set boundaries. Like, that it's a very scary thing, especially when you're young, to do that. And like I said, I was naive enough to do it indirectly, but I've learned, like, looking back, I've learned from that. Like, just set your boundaries. Just know that you're most likely, I don't want to say 100%, but most likely you're not going to get fired for leaving work at 5 o'clock. If you do, you have a very good wrongful termination lawsuit that you can use, but you're not going to get fired. You're going to be fine. Like, people may give you some stinky looks, but who cares?
Right. Yeah. I think the big thing that you were hinting at and saying, like, I can do my work from home, they know I can do my work from home, is I think that's the aspect that you have to hit down first. Especially when you're new, you have to put in the people's minds that are depending on you that you can do your job. If you aren't doing that, if you're not doing your job, then have fun leaving early, or have fun, leaving at that 9 to 5. If you're leaving before, in a scenario where you're leaving or seemingly leaving before everyone else is leaving, and you're not getting your work done, then people have a right to be mad at you, because how else, like, they're depending on you to get something done. If you aren't getting it done, they're like, how are you spending your time? They won't hesitate to be like, why is he here, or why is she here?
Absolutely.
To be able to set those boundaries, you also have to pull your weight.
Oh yeah, like, work efficiently. Absolutely.
It's not just a, like we mentioned a little bit here, we're in an industry that works very fast, and with turnover so popular, and with people biting at the bit to have your position, people are going to be, reaching out, to your bosses and being like, hey, I'm a designer, I would love to get a possible opportunity to work with you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever the situation may be, maybe not your boss, but someone else's boss. Yeah. If you're not pulling your weight and you're leaving when, yes, you're working the 8 hours. Okay. No one's faulting you at being there from 9 to 5, but whether you're there or whether like being there is one thing, but working and doing the stuff that you're assigned to do and doing what you're responsible for and going that extra mile every once in a while, helping people out and doing that stuff, you have to be setting that stone first before you can expect people not to get on your ass for leaving.
Yes, 100%. You got to set your boundaries, but also, I just lost my train of thought. You also need to understand that you are replaceable. Like, I think that's a big thing in our industry is we are replaceable. There, like you were hinting at, or like we talked about earlier, there's so many people in this industry. There's so many people that are wanting your job. So you have to kind of come in with that, the fire under your ass, under your whatever, the fire in you to work hard, but just budget your time. Know if you get in at 8 or 9 and you're going to leave around 5, like you said, just make sure you get your stuff done. And as long as you're doing that, as long as you're doing what you need to be doing, don't worry about anything else. Just get in, put your head down, get stuff done, do your best work, be creative, have fun, and then get out and enjoy your life. Because at the end of the day, work is not life. You need to have something outside that keeps you grounded and outside of what you're doing, because if you don't, you're going to burn out, and that's the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Hell yeah.
Well, worst thing that happened in the industry.
Right. Well, man, it's been a pleasure having you on today. It really has been. It's been a conversation long overdue. That's for damn sure. And yeah, it's been great having you. I'm grateful for you taking the time out of your day to come on here and have a conversation. And talk shop and talk about stuff that we care about. And it's been fantastic to reconnect, man. That's for sure.
Yeah, dude, it's been awesome. I think just one thing I kind of want to touch on, because like you said, I kind of reached out to you and wanted to talk about mental health. And like a big part of that is the, working the long hours and everything and setting your boundaries. Something I kind of wanted to touch on that's been on my mind and my heart since I got this job is I'm diagnosed with ADHD, diagnosed with depression. I'm on medication. I'm going to therapy right now, figuring everything out. But I've had, not to get too deep, but I've had suicide attempts. I've been at a very low point when I was 16, as recently as last year. I've been through it. And when I was in 2020, when the pandemic was going on, I was working for Austin P and I was working the FCS. And I remember having the thought of just questioning if I did the right thing of dropping out of school, questioning if I should be doing this, questioning if I was ever going to get out of the FCS. And it was a very big moment of just I don't know if I should be did I make the right decision? And it caused a lot of mental health. It caused a lot of my anxiety and my depression flaring up. It caused just a lot of stuff. And just all that to say, I'm 3 years later, I'm still in therapy. I'm still dealing with it. So it's not one of those things that just gets cured with, getting a nice job, doing all this stuff. But I just wanted to say, I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad I'm still around, because I am now working in the NFL doing what I love. So if there's anyone out there that feels the same way, that is going through those same struggles of, I'm doing great, I feel like I'm doing good things, but I still feel those the depressive episodes and everything, you're not alone. I go through it. I still struggle with it. You're going to get through it. It's going to be okay. And it's just something that's really been, I had that moment of whenever I got the job of just being man, I almost was not here in 26. I almost committed suicide in 2016. And all of a sudden now I'm working in NFL. 7 years is not that long. So it really can feel depression can feel like the end of the world. It can feel like the last resort. It can feel like nothing's going to get better. It's just give it time. I promise it's going to be okay, and you're going to figure yourself out. And I just wanted that to be my last message to people of if you're struggling through this stuff, it's going to be okay. You're going to figure it out, because I did. And it's great to be, right now has been awesome. So I'm just very, very happy.
That's fantastic, man. That's awesome. I did not know that about you. So that's really awesome to hear. Yeah. I don't know. You left me speechless.
Yeah. I'm sorry it's just been something that I've been wanting to talk about. And so whenever you like, I really appreciate you giving me the platform to be able to do it. Cause whenever you hit me up, that was something that really, like, I thought it was like, I just want to make sure I put that out there. Cause I know it's just dealing with it since I was 16. You feel so alone when you go through stuff like that, and you feel like nobody else goes through it, but you do. Like, I mean, they do. There are other people out there. Now that I'm older, I realize, like, man, there's a lot of people out there that probably feel the same way. And I just want to make sure they know that if you get through it and you get the help you need and you figure stuff out, that you can, even, I don't even want to say be on the other side of it, because I'm not even, I still struggle from like, there's bad days, there's good days. And like, I love my therapist, and I enjoy everything that I get to do, and I'm still going through it, but just keep pushing. You're going to make it through it, and you're going to see a brighter side. And now 7 years later, I'm working my dream job. So it does get better. And I just wanted to put that out there for anybody that needed to hear it.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Well, if you guys want to connect with Trevin, all his stuff will be down below. His links will be down below. His Twitter and his portfolio for sure will be down below. So if you want to connect with him, all that's down below if you would like to in the description. But anyways, again, man, it's been fantastic having you on.
Appreciate you having me on, man.
It was a great conversation. We went over an hour. It's a little bit over an hour. It's been a great time.
Probably me rambling a little bit, but that's okay.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's why I do this, to share people's experiences. So, but yeah, with that, people, this has been episode 91 of the Creative Process Podcast. I hope you have a great rest of your day, month, week, whenever you are watching this or listening to this. And as always, make sure you tell someone that you love them. All right, we will take it easy. We'll see you in episode 92. Bye.
See you guys.